The Detroit Lions in 2015 had a disastrous start to the season. Then Martha Ford got her wad in a bunch, and she was roaming around Ford Field and the offices of the Lions, and heads were rolling. And you were wondering, was Jim Caldwell's head going to be the next on the chopping block? But ultimately, it wasn't. And the Detroit Lions went out and finished strongly the second half of 2015. Then, of course, you get the big announcement that Megatron, Calvin Johnson, is retiring from the National Football League. So you wonder, what is 2016 going to look like for the Lions team? Well, I'll give them credit where credit's due. They built off of that momentum from the tail end of 2015 and turned in a solid season in 2016. They went 9-7 and made it to the wild card round of the playoffs. You know, not something to celebrate massively, but if you're the Detroit Lions organization, it's something, and it's progress. And I'm sure that organization and a lot of their fans are looking ahead to 2017 and hoping to see even more progress. But as I look at this team and I look at their reality, it's interesting to me because they're just as likely to go 9-7 as they are 7-9. They're not terrible, but they're not great. And I don't know if they're going to be terrible anytime soon, but I'm pretty confident they're not going to be great anytime soon. So the margin is kind of razor thin for the type of team that they are within a certain area, kind of middle of the road. And even when I look at adding a Ricky Wagner in free agency, yes, you let Riley Reif go in free agency. How much of an upgrade is Wagner really at right tackle? And you go into the draft, you get Jared Davis, you get Teez Tabor, a couple of kids from Florida that you hope can contribute on the defense, but are they going to be real difference makers for you? Probably Davis more so than Tabor at this point. Now, as a team, you've got some things to be positive about. You've got Matthew Stafford. You just got him paid with a long-term deal. And Matthew Stafford, for some of his faults and some of the things he doesn't do, like beat teams with a winning record, ultimately he's gotten to the team to the playoffs, I believe now, 3 times in his career. And for the Detroit Lions, that is saying something. And ultimately, you look at Matthew Stafford, there are many teams that wish they had a guy like Matthew Stafford. He has at least been the identity of the Lions since 2009. He has been their franchise quarterback, especially now in recent years because he's been able to stay on the football field. So you start off with Matthew Stafford, you feel like you have a chance to win some games, especially games against teams with losing records. You look at the pass-catching talent that they have. You've got Golden Tate. You've got Marvin Jones. You've got Theo Riddick out of the backfield. Eric Ebron showed you a little bit more in 2016. You've got some nice weapons in the passing game. And I look at the defensive side of the ball. I see guys in the secondary like Darius Slay, Glover Quinn. They've got some talent there as well. Problem is, on the flip side, in terms of the big question marks for this team, I still don't know where the hell the running game is going to come from. I don't see anything that Amir Abdullah has shown you in his first 2 years in the league. Granted, he missed most of last year with an injury, but I don't see any reason to get excited about Amir Abdullah as your featured ball carrier. And who else is there going to be? Zach Center? Dwayne Washington? I mean, who else do you have? It was really striking and frankly surprising that the Lions organization didn't do a better job of addressing this gaping weakness in their offense and in their team as a whole, because that lack of running game, that consistent lack of balance in the offense puts undue pressure upon Matthew Stafford, and oftentimes when things don't go well, you get turnovers or you get 3 and outs, you get quick drives that put your defense on the field even more. And ultimately, no matter how good your passing game even is, and the Lions passing game is solid at least, ultimately the problem is you've got a team where you know on offense what they're doing the vast majority of the time. It's a lot easier to game plan and adjust accordingly. Then you look at their pass protection without Taylor Decker, who's going to be out for several weeks to start this season. I thought Taylor Decker showed him some nice flashes at the left tackle position last year, but now you're without your left tackle. That's not a good formula for success early on in the season. And then defensively, Ezekiel Ansah had a nice early start to his career, and last year he was absent, AWOL. What do you have, like 2.5 sacks? Where's that pass rush going to come from for the Detroit Lions? They need Ansah to have a bigger season. They need other guys to step up too. And right now, I don't know if they have the level of talent in terms of pass rushers to be able to consistently affect opposing teams and their passing games. Now, looking at their schedule, I look at, honestly, the one thing that matters with the Detroit Lions. And it has for years. And again, as I've referenced a couple of minutes ago in the video, it's one of the big bugaboos for the Lions in Matthew Stafford's tenure as the team's starting quarterback, is they just don't beat good teams consistently enough. They just don't beat teams with winning records. They just don't. And I look at the schedule this year, and you've got games at New York against the Giants. You host Atlanta. You host Pittsburgh. You have to go to Green Bay. You got to play Green Bay at home too. You got to go to Baltimore. You got to go to Tampa Bay. These are all teams last year that had records that were better than 8-8. That's what, 7 games right there. 5 of them against playoff teams, and 2 of them that were on the borderline of being playoff teams last year. Those are the pivotal games for the Detroit Lions because they can handle business against some of the lesser teams in the league. The problem is they don't beat anybody that matters when it really matters. And while you look at a team like this and you say you've got a franchise quarterback, you just made the playoffs, had a progress and improvement from 2015 to 2016, why wouldn't you envision another step up in 2017? I think in part it ties into some of the failings and disappointments they've had in recent years in the first round of the NFL draft. I look at 2010, you got Ndamukong Suh. He was a beast. No longer there. And you really didn't get anything for him on the way out the door. Jahvid Best was the other first-round pick that year, and he was an epic flop. 2011, Nick Fairley. He never really gave you anything of any note or significance during his time in Detroit. Let's just call it as we see it. And he's elsewhere. So your first-round picks for 2010 and 2011, 3 of them, none of them are on your team anymore. 2012's first-round pick, Riley Reiff, just left via free agency. He never became the left tackle that this organization hoped and envisioned he could be, but the fact is ultimately he is gone. So you're getting absolutely nothing out of 3 straight first rounds and 4 first-round picks over a 3-year stretch on this current team. Those are the type of guys that should be the foundation pieces, the leaders, the building blocks for your organization. And none of them are there. Ezekiel Ansah, 2013. He's had moments, but he disappointed in 2016. Eric Ebron, the tight end from North Carolina. His best season by far in the NFL was 2016, and I still don't think it was anything massively to write home about. And every time Lions fans probably do see Eric Ebron, they probably do look ultimately and say, man, I wonder how Odell Beckham Jr. would have looked in this offense. 2015's first-round pick, Laken Tomlinson, ended up being a complete bust and got traded off, I think, to the 49ers for a 5th-round pick. And then 2016's first-round pick, left tackle Taylor Decker, I thought was very good as a rookie, but again, he is missing a good portion of the start of the season. So you're talking about a team that over the course of 7 drafts had 8 first-round picks, and exactly 2 of them are on the active roster for game number 1. That's an awful lot of years gone by where you've got little to no impact out of your first-round picks, or those guys that you did take previously in the first round are no longer there to contribute anyways. And you have not filled in the gaps and made up for some of those mistakes and some of those deficiencies, and that gives you the Detroit Lions team that you see, which is to me a team that could beat some bad teams and struggles to beat most, if not all, of the good teams. That's why I'm not that high on the Lions. I was a little bit higher on them last year, honestly, which I thought I was pretty much on the money. This year, not so much. I think they're at best a 7-win team, and they're going to finish 3rd in this division, and Jim Caldwell probably is going to get shown the door.